Hindi pa natin umpisahan for prayer.
Yes, thank you po for that wonderful prayer po, opening prayer. Now, let us proceed to our opening remarks. Let us call our College of Education Officer in Charge, Dr. Eva Aurora Kaluin, for the opening remarks.
Magandang buhay. Sa ngalan ng Kolehiyo ng Edukasyon, malugod namin kayong tinatanggap sa ikawalong webinar na pinangungunahan ng kolehiyo, mga leader, estudyante. Sa paksang tatalakayin ng ating tagapagsalita, mapaisip tayo sa mga katanungan kung paano, kailan, at bakit kailangan nating pag-isipan ang mga adhikain ng edukasyon. Mga katanungang magpapanumbalik sa ating mga isipan nung nag-aaral pa tayo sa mga guro dito, kung bakit ba tayo dapat magpatuloy? Why there should be continuity of learning despite this pandemic? Bakit may mga ganitong webinars? Para saan? Naalala ko yung essay ni Alfred North Whitehead, isa siyang kilalang thinker doon sa philosophy of education, no? Sabi niya noong 1916, and I quote, "A merely well-informed man is the most useless bore on God's earth. What we should aim at producing is men who possess both culture and expert knowledge in some special direction." End of quote. Ang ganda nung sinabi niya na parang, hindi pwedeng maalam ka lang, hindi pwedeng matalino ka lang. Kasi wala kang saysay o wala kang katuturan kung maalam ka lang. Kailangan, bakit mo siya inaaral o bakit mo siya gustong matutunan, no? Sa panahon ng pandemya, anong kultura at pagkadalubhasa ang kinakailangan nating pag-usapan bilang mga guro, mga susunod na guro ng bayan, upang matamo ang anumang ating mapagkakasunduang adhikain ng edukasyon. So let's listen to Mr. John Israel Cunanan as he shares important thoughts about this matter. Once again, good morning and welcome.
Yeah. Maraming salamat po, Dr. Eva Halueng para po sa ating opening remarks for episode 8 or for today. And now may I call on our Secretary in College of Education Student Council para i-introduce sa atin ang ating resource speaker for today.
Ayun, hello, naririnig ba ako? Hello?
Yes, partner. Yes, Jazz.
Okay. Our our guest resource speaker this morning is a Bachelor of Arts major in Humanities graduate from the University of Asia in the Pacific. He took 18 units of Certificate of Professional Education and completed his Bachelor of Arts in of the University of the East. The research was titled Philosophy of Education, Instruction and Textbook Evaluation and Publishing Office of the University. Please let us all welcome Mr. John Israel Yukunana.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Uh, are you hearing me loud and clear?
Yes po.
Okay, that's great.
Yes,
So good
sir.
morning, everybody. I am very much thankful for this opportunity this morning to the College of Education of the University of the East, the College of Education, University of the East Student Council, to Dr. Eva Kalueng, the OIC of the College of Education, and I'm very, very much thankful for this opportunity. So, okay, and I'm very much humbled. Anyway, let me just share my screen. All right. Now, if you're interested, you can just, if you have questions, by the way, you can just email these questions to me. I posted there my email address, and you can also add me up in Facebook. I usually post nuggets of ideas regarding Philippine education and philosophy of education. So the topic this morning is how to, when to, and why think about the aims of education. All right. Also known as philosophizing about aims. You will know later why I placed that subtitle. All right. So let me just fix my camera. I'm being informed that it's not great. Okay. Now, I prepared this webinar specifically for three groups of people. First, it's for the pre-service teacher. What I mean by pre-service here is that these are college students who are pursuing education. Second, I prepared this for in-service teachers. These are the ones who are already on the ground. These are the ones who are already teaching. Uh, okay, there are no slides. So I was just informed that there are no slides for a while. Do you now see the slides? Okay, I think it is a yes. All right. So my apologies for that. Let me continue. Anyway, that's the title, and then there's this subtitle, philosophizing about aims. Yeah. Thank you for informing me. Anyway, as I was saying a while ago, I prepared these for three groups of people: pre-service teachers, in-service teachers, and lastly for educational administrators. Now, if you are neither of these three, suppose that you are a senior high school student thinking of what to pursue in college, then this will also be beneficial for you because you will have a sense of what is actually being done in the educative domain. Now, if you are a non-education graduate and thinking of pursuing your like shifting your career to education, this will also help you. And if you are neither of these five, obviously there will come a time that you will be a parent, or maybe you are already a parent, and obviously you will be greatly concerned with the educational welfare of your sons, daughters, or if you don't have plans of becoming a parent, your nieces or your nephews. And lastly, this is for anyone who just wants to make sense of education. Now, you might be wondering, John, of all the topics that you could have chosen, why pick aims of education? There's so many topics. Why this? Now, I know that 80% or probably 90% of the people listening to us right now are teachers. And I am willing to bet, very much willing to bet, that one of the primary reasons why you are in the teaching profession is that you want to help people. I think that is a given. And that is one of the reasons why you're there. I mean, the teaching profession does not really give you that much of an income, but it gives you a sense of satisfaction by being able to help another, by being able to help other people. Now, it's the same thing with me. So what I'm doing right now, I'm just giving you a short autobiographical account why I picked, explaining why I picked the topic aims of education. So I have the same commitment. I am very much desirous of helping other people. And I am very much desirous of contributing something toward the betterment of our educational system. Now, these are all very idealistic, right? Well, we should be. We should all be. We are teachers. We should be idealistic. Now, it is a given, all right? It is a fact that is so undeniable that our educational system is far from perfect. There is so much to amend, so much to revise, so much to add, so much to change. There's so much. It's far from perfect. So here I am, and here you are, okay, thinking of how you can contribute toward the betterment of this system. Now, in my case, I'm thinking of these things, and eventually I was led to the fundamentals of education. And what do I mean by fundamentals here? Okay, imagine yourself. You're at the middle of the ocean, and then you throw a piece of rock, and that rock goes down, 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 deeper, deeper until it reaches bedrock. Now, that bedrock, that is foundation. It means that there is none deeper than that. And that is what I mean by fundamentals of education. Now, one of the fundamentals of education, one of the many, is the point, the purpose, the goal, the aim of education. And eventually, when we start thinking about this, we are led to the field called philosophy of education. Oops! And that's why um, this is my topic, aims of education. Now, wait a minute, John. I did not sign up for a lecture on philosophy of education. I'm fooled. And maybe you even have this impression that philosophy is a waste of time, like just any philosophy. It is not practical, it is not specific, it is not grounded, and it is too theoretical. Okay, I understand that. There are innumerable problems in PH educational system. I know that. But remember, I just gave you an account, an autobiographical account. Where did I start? I started with a desire to contribute to the educational system of the Philippines. I started with my desire to help other people. These are concrete things. These are practical things. These are not theoretical points. I started there, but I landed in philosophy of education. So we can still do, all right? We can still do philosophy of education because we want to look for concrete, practical, grounded, specific solutions to certain problems. Now, let me just share you this one. This is from Hans Johann Glock. Let me just read. Philosophers have attempted to analyze, define, or explain concepts. They have addressed what is questions. For example, what is justice? What is truth? What is knowledge? Now, you might have this kind of impression. To those of a practical frame of mind, this activity may appear pointless right from the start. But Bloch says, but for the most part, philosophers do not pose what is questions for their own sake. They arise out of problems of a different kind. Have you heard of the phrase "la pour l'art"? It's French for art for art's sake. Now, philosophy is not like that. You start doing philosophy because there are more fundamental prodding questions, and that these prodding questions are practical, fundamentally practical in their very core. Now, it's the same thing with me. All right. So I believe that in ancient, I believe that you are aware of the three great names in ancient philosophy: Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Right, teacher, student. Now, Plato has this dialogue. His works are called dialogues because there are two people or more than who are conversing with one another. Now, the main point there is trying to answer the question, what is virtue? All right, but uh, Socrates or Plato does not really want to just ask the question, what is virtue, for the mere sake of asking the question, what is virtue. No, there is a more fundamental prodding point behind the question, what is virtue. And you know what that is? Take a look at this one. Is virtue acquired by teaching or by practice? Can virtue be taught? This is something practical. This is very educational, right? So um, the reason why Plato and Socrates, these people are asking what is virtue, because they want to be able to answer, can we teach virtue? Now, it's the same thing with me. It's the same thing, I hope, for you when you approach philosophy, philosophy of education, or philosophical ideas. Now, philosophy is a second order inquiry. All right. So what are the aims of education? I will be honest with you right now. I'm not going to answer that question. No. My topic, take note, is how to, when to, and why think about the aims of education. My topic is never what are the aims of education. We are not going to answer substantively the question, what are the aims of education? That could be another thing. But I want you first to understand, what do we mean by aim? And what do we mean by education? Because this understanding is very much necessary for us to be able to ask and look for solutions, look for answers to practical questions. So what do you think are the second order questions here? Obviously, what is aim, right? Oh, John, I already know the meaning of aim. Really? Okay, really? Now later, we are going to unpack this three-letter word. There's so much. There is so much to say from this three-letter word. So what else? What is education? This is a very interesting question, but we're not going to talk about this. And then lastly, does it even make sense to ask the question, what are the aims of education? So philosophy is a second order inquiry. It asks meta questions. Like, for example, the question, if you are very much interested in like a news article, you are asking, is that true? But the philosophical question there is, how do we say, oh, what are the conditions for saying that something is true or not, right? So from is that true, you ask a prior question. How do we say when something is true or not? So that is philosophy. Okay, anyway, let me just lay down what we are going to use in dealing with the question, what is aim? A particular philosophical methodology called, this is what we're going to use, conceptual analysis. I promised myself that once I start teaching in a teacher education institution, I will be cultivating this skill in my students. Teachers, I am so much convinced, teachers need to have the skill to be able to analyze concepts. Now, this is what we are going to use this morning. And when we analyze concepts, the the conclusion is to be able to come up with a philosophical
students,
definition.
teachers, I
Now,
am
let's
so
contrast.
much
Philosophical
convinced
definition is
teachers
not a
need
lexical
to
definition.
have
They
the
are
skill
totally
to
different.
be
A
able
lexical
to
definition is
analyze
just a
concepts.
very
Now, this is
simple
what we are going to
definition,
use this morning.
like a
And
stipulation of
when
what
we
something is.
analyze concepts,
Philosophical definition
is
the
more
conclusion
sophisticated
is to be
and it
able
is
to come up with
more
a philosophical
nuanced.
definition. Now, you
Teachers,
might be
I am
wondering,
so
what's
much
philosophical
convinced,
definition?
John,
Not
what's the
you
point of
need
having a
to have.
sophisticated
They
and
are
nuanced
totally
understanding?
different.
Let's
To
analyze
something more
concepts.
very
Now,
simple.
this is our understanding this morning
Has
and
a big
when
part.
we analyze
Our
philosophical
definition,
definition in action,
is
the
more
conclusion
sophisticated
is
to be able to
our
more
understanding of something.
definition.
Teachers, I
Now,
am
a big
so
part
much
of
convinced
our
decisions
need
having a
to have.
sophisticated
They
and
are
nuanced
totally
understanding.
different.
Let's
If we
analyze
something more practical,
very
now
simple
apply
our
this
understanding of
this
something
morning,
has a
and
big
our
part.
understanding
Analyze
our
philosophical
definition,
definition,
educational
more
sophisticated
sophisticated
and
able to
always
our understanding
will have
teachers,
great
I am
implications
so
where
much
in
in
policies,
policies,
implementation,
having
strategies,
sophisticated
and
and
methodologies,
nuanced
and it
understanding.
will surely have great implications. Therefore, it's just imperative that we, in the educative domain, should have a robust understanding and will have great. Let me just give you an example. In policies, I think you have seen this one, right? In the news, on the news, great senator, therefore, it's just me. Senator Wing Gatchalian said, in the educative domain at home economics, this is during the pandemic when they're still deciding what to include, all right, in the education. So this is some months ago. They're still deciding when the pandemic, when the lockdown just restarted. Senator Wing Gatchalian is saying, tanggalin muna at home economics, lagi ang basic subjects tulad ng math. They're still deciding what to include. Senator Gatchalian in the education was gearing toward deciding a policy. Now that policy will be removed, the suggestion rather, to remove PE and home economics and just focus on what he calls the so-called basic subjects, math and English. Now here you can see, I think many of us policies disagree. I strongly disagree. I mean, what do we mean exactly? Remove suggestion rather. What do we mean by basic subjects? And just, I mean, our math and science, our math, basic English, basic science, and English. What do we mean by basic subjects? Here, all right, here, this is the field of policy making implementation. But you can see here that Mr. Gatchalian does not really have, a robust understanding of educational concepts. Why would he suggest that we remove here, all right, economics? So you can see here that he doesn't have robust understanding of the functions of this subject. Therefore, he is, with this kind of understanding, it's being translated into policy implementation, decision making. My point is, we have to have, so you can see here that, all right, let's understanding of the function. I hope that I was able to convince you somehow. He is with this kind of understanding. But later I will have some words on the state decision philosophy of education. My peers, we have a conceptual analysis. Now, all right, let's understanding. Okay, linguistically, or typically we view A as an A in mind, right? It's the way how dictionaries define it. It's the way how people understand the word aim. This three-letter word. It means and in the mind. Now, or typically, the phrase and the mind. We are going to unpack that, right? By answering the question, is there a difference between mere result and result of an end in mind? Is mere result identical word? Result and of an end in mind. Now, are they similar? The phrase and we are going to unpack the meaning of end in mind by
answering the question that I posed, the way how end result. Now, to be able to answer this question, let me give you a scenario. Well, this scenario in my mind is, John, this is similar. The phrase, okay, and the point is, I actually selected intentionally my trivial scenario to drive the point, so that everybody now to be able to answer this question, let me give you a scenario. Well, this scenario in my mind is, John, this is similar. The phrase, okay, and the point is, I actually selected intentionally my trivial scenario to drive the point, so that everybody to be able to answer this question, let me give you a scenario. To me, I think the connection is unstable. Let me just pause for a while. Okay, I'm already reminded that it's okay. So let's continue. The first scenario is this one. There is a broken glass on the floor. A broken glass on the floor. All right. Now, I think the connection is unstable. Say, let me just pause for a while. The fact that there is a broken glass on the floor is, let's continue. The first scenario is a result. There is of an end in mind. A broken glass. All right. If you accidentally knock it over from the table, say, let me just repeat that question to make it more concrete and understandable. It's a fact, all right? It is given. That's the result. The result is that there is in mind broken glass on the floor, all right? Now, are you going to say that that result is a result of the end in mind if you unintentionally, if you accidentally knock it over? Obviously, no. You're not going to say that. Why? Because it was never in your mind in this place. Broken glass on the floor. You are you're currently walking in the kitchen, all right? It's never in your mind, and then you bump the table, you knock it over from the table, it falls toward the floor, and then it was never in your mind, and it's never in your brain. So it's not a result of an end in your curve, it's just called near result. All right? It's not. The second scenario is this one, and then so that's the first scenario. The second scenario is this one. Suppose that toward the floor, and then right 10 a.m. It's never thinking about the result of having a broken glass on the floor. At 10 a.m. So you're imagining, the second scenario is this: are you really want, you intend to have a broken glass on the floor? So that's at 10 a.m. Now at 10:01, you go to the kitchen. You're thinking about the result of, you go to the pantry, and then at 10:02, you pick up a fragile glass. Not the one really made by Moody's peanut butter. The thick glass, no, fragile glass. Okay, and then while holding the glass, you raise your hand, and then you let go of it, and then at 10:02, you crash it onto the ground, and then it gets broken. Not the one really result of an end in mind, because you were already thinking about it. You're already thinking about it. So I think it now makes sense, right? The difference between the real result and result that you ended up with, they are not the same. Now, what is the philosophical definition? It gets broken. Let me borrow from a philosopher, because you were already thinking about it. He is a philosopher already. Let me borrow from a philosopher of education. John Dewey. All right, the real result philosopher. For the research teacher, not most probably, most certainly, you have encountered the name. Let me borrow and you have you know somebody thinking about it, thinking about him in left. You might be asked, like, who's the proponent of pragmatism in education, right? So that's philosopher John Dewey. Now, how does John Dewey philosophically define? You have encountered the name. Very interesting. Take note of this one. From his book, you have In Democracy and Education. This is his magnum opus. You might ask, he's the best proponent of pragmatism. He considers it his best work, right? So he defines John Dewey. Now, let me read verbatim. Philosophy defines our seeing that gives direction to activity. It is not an idle view. This is his maximum opus, but influences the steps taken to reach the end. He defines John Dewey. He regards reading as seeing And in other words, as a foresight to activity. But this foresight is something that gives direction to an activity. The same thing with my example without our scenario a while ago. At 10 o'clock, I was already and already foresaw the broken glass on the floor. And because I foresaw it, I directed myself, right? So aim is foreseeing and it is a foresight. Now, this is where it gets interesting. This is where you can see the implication, the practical implications, the conceptual analysis. Let's look at the four functions. Dewey said that an aim is a foresight and it gives direction to an activity. That's interesting. This is where let's look at the four ways you can see the implications, as a the implications, the conceptual analysis to an activity. First, all right, first function. It makes one observant and sensitive to the foresight. If you are a person with an aim, all right, it makes you observant and sensitive of the means. Now, the means, these are the things that you can first tap to be able to accomplish the end that you have in mind. Now, go back again, you are a trivial scenario, just to make a point, all right? Trivial, observant, and sensitive of the means of having a broken glass. These are the things that you can I became sensitive. I became observant of the several means that you have in mind. Now, verse 2, you are I went to the pantry, I picked up a fragile glass. Not the thick glass, a fragile glass. I mean, since I picked up the thick glass, for me, it would not have on the floor gotten broken, right? I became already sensitive of the several because I have an aim in mind. I have the aim. I went to the pantry, I picked up a second glass. Again, we are trying to answer the question, how does the aim function as a direction toward any activity, right? Second, I am already sensitive makes the one because I have an observant and sensitive of the hindrances. So we are not only talking about means here. Hindrances, means hindrances, positive, how negative, aim, positive ways and negative ways. Now, what activity is the hindrance in our scenario? Makes the one because I did not let go of the glass on a carpeted floor because if I did let go of it on a carpeted floor, it would not have gotten broken. So I select that's a hindrance. Is the I selected a marble floor or a cemented floor of the glass on a carpeted floor. That is like how an aim functions would not have like how an aim functions in directing. That's our activity. Now third, a marble suggests you have an aim to suggest proper order or sequence of the means. Same scenario again, right? There's a proper order because I have that in mind. How an aim functions in the pantry. I select our fragile glass in order, right? I raise my hand while holding it, and I will place the glass. It's in order. I did not start with same scenario again because there's a proper order. I'm not even holding the glass yet. So 1, 2, 3, 4. The pantry. 3, 4, select one. It's not 2, 4, 3, 1. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. I raise my hand. You have the aim in mind. It suggests to you the proper order or sequence of the means by which you can attain at the end. And the last is very important. So, my dear teachers, pre-service educational administrator, it economizes your order before sequence. Now, economy here is not referring to like the economics, but somehow by the difficulties there. What do you mean by you can attain to making economical, reducing the variables that are there, making it more efficient, more efficient. In other words, shortcut economy here is I already have in mind I have but somehow like a broken glass in my mind. I would not add economical, all right, reducing step or a variable that are there, 1, 2, 3, making it more efficient, and they are more economical. In other words, they're efficient. That's what I mean by efficient. I think it's very clear, right? I have somehow, and I think if you're a teacher, right? If you are a teacher, it's now becoming clear to you how you can apply having an aim in mind in your daily pedagogical practice. I think it's clear now to you, but later we go to that. So again, and I think these are the ways how having an aim in mind functions as a direction to our activities. Okay, now let's apply aim as a foresight in Philippine education. So again, I place their initials to help us. NHP means inventions, proper order of steps, and economy. Okay, now let's aims in education. Oh yes, obviously we have education, and there's actually a manner. All right, I place their initials in which this is applied in our educational system, and this is in outcomes. It's called the outcomes-based education, and it is in CHED, CMO 46 series of 2012. Now, I place their initials in which this is applied in our educational system, and this is in because this is a subject that I taught before, so I know this one. It is grade 7. If you're a teacher of other subjects, you can you're basically very much aware of the different curriculum guide. So this is the curriculum guide ng edukasyon pagpapakatao grade 7. And what we're doing right now is we are trying to apply the idea of aim as foresight in Philippine educational system. Now, one of the content there, 6.4, basically is let me read verbatim nakabubuo ng curriculum guide. So this is the curriculum guide ng edukasyon pagpapakatao grade 7. And what we're doing right now is we are trying to apply the idea of aim as foresight. Let's look at this one. If we are considering the means, one of the content is there, we are considering the means, the hindrances, the proper order of steps, the economy, how will I be able, right? As teacher, how will I be able to ensure that the student at the end of the lecture, at the end of the day, that the student is able to what? Na nakakabuo siya ng proper order of steps, the economy. I'm thinking of that. How will I be able, I have in mind, as stipulated in the curriculum guide of the ESP at grade 7 of the lecture. So there are several means that I can choose. I can choose several means. And the means, I have gotten really sensitive to this means because I know what it is. All right? And it's the same thing with stipulated. Now, a possible hindrance is this. The student does not understand the meaning of the kind of batas moral. I can choose several means. And since I already got to understand, or since I have already foreseen a possible hindrance, the student does not understand the hindrance, then the first thing that I'm going to do is to make sure that the student understands the meaning of the natural moral law. And since I already got to understand the proper order of steps, now see, of course, a possible either I start the lecture with a definition, the first thing that I did, which is how to make sure that the student educationalists would say as the traditional way of the natural but moral. It's fine. Either I start with the tradition, with the definition of, or the meaning of the natural moral law, or I start with which is how giving the students educationalists would say as the traditional way of who have either provided us with exemplary ideas, exemplary actions with regard to this natural moral law, or either or, which is just fine. But the point is, so exemplary, rather I am aware of the proper order of steps. And lastly, who have either provided us I'm able to exemplary ideas, exemplary I am able with regard to this. So this is how we can apply our understanding of aim, and with this understanding of the four functions of how an aim directs the student to our daily pedagogical practice. practice provided us
I'm
with
able to
exemplary
exemplary.
Well, this is just a quote.
exemplary
I am able
actions.
to
We
teach
teachers will be
students
greatly
how we
helped
can apply
our
our
pedagogy
understanding of
if
things
All right.
we
and
believe
understand
we
the
render
most
of
adequate
our aim
direction
to the aim
of
of
how
daily
education
So
pedagogy.
now,
Now I'm gonna ask you,
I'm able to
if you are
exemplary.
an
well, this is just a
in-service
quote.
teacher,
I am
are you
able to
very much
teach
aware,
students
right?
how
Very
we
much
can
aware
apply
of the aims of the
our
subject.
So
understanding of
just the
If
things
subject.
the aims of the
understand
subjects that
the
you're
most
handling
adequate direction
So
if
if
not, I highly
I'm
suggest
so
that you
now,
familiarize yourself
able to
if you
exemplary.
are an
well, this is just
in-service
a quote.
teacher. Don't
I
just
am
rely on
able to
textbooks. We
teach
aware it's the
how
curriculum
we
guide.
can
Textbooks
apply
are English, written
Just the subject.
on the basis of the subjects that you're
So the
handling.
curriculum guides are to
If
use
not,
a religious
I highly suggest that you
metaphor is
familiarize yourself. The curriculum
if
guides
you
are
are
the
an
Bible.
in-service
They
teacher,
are the Bible of Philippine educational
it's
system.
curriculum guide.
If you are an in-service teacher, listen, you can start now. Familiarize yourself with the curriculum guide of the subject
A
that you're
religious
planning to
metaphor
handle.
all right.
Familiarize yourself.
Now,
Another thing, okay, let's leave that idea for the moment that in if you're an in-service teacher, listen, that you can start now. Familiarize yourself with the curriculum guide of the subject. Another way of looking at things from the perspective of axiology. Now, axiology is one of the branches of philosophy. It deals with the primary question: what is value?
so now,
It has something to do with values, not necessarily because the thing is that when we hear the word value, the first thing that enters our mind that is one of the branches referring to moral values. No, not just that. There are several values: ethics, values, moral values, spiritual values, religious values, not necessarily anything about the thing is that when we theology that deals with that, that critically looks into those things. All right. So the aim from the vantage point of axiology, consider this curriculum guide from grade 9 English, first quarter, week 1 LT literature. So if you're handling English, I most certainly am, I mean, most certainly you are aware. from the vantage point. The competency is this. The aim is this. The student should be able to analyze literature, quarter, week 1 L brain literature. So if you're handling another grade 3 mapping, the student should be able to identify conditioning and flexibility exercise that includes body mechanics. The competency is grade 8 science. The student should be able to explain the student should be able to analyze simulation and expression. And then grade 11, personal development, grade 3 mapping, the one that I have, the curriculum guide is written in Filipino because it can be taught in Filipino, not in English. It says, ang estudyante ay student should be able to explain ang koneksyon ng isip, nadarama, at kinikilos sa isang konkretong pangyayari sa buhay. So these are the aims. These are the specific aims related within specific subjects. Now, consider this. Why are they there? Why are they there? Why is it? Of all the things in an English subject that can be put there, why is it specifically the aim is that the student should be able to analyze and consider this? Why are they there? Because it's considered valuable. There is this assumption, right? Things in an English subject that can be put there, why is it specifically there is this assumption that the student should be able to analyze in being able to analyze literature as a means of discovering because it's considered it's the same thing for all these things. And if there is this assumption for each and every competency in the curriculum guide which is provided to us by the Department of Education, the mere fact that they are there and not others, it's the same thing for all these things. And if there is valuable for all that's why they are there. Each and every competency. Now you might be asking, are they really valuable? That's another thing. And that's a good question. If you're asking that, it's good. You are being philosophical. That is good. But we're not going to answer that. That's another thing. It's another topic to talk about. It's a big issue. All right.
That's why they are
So
there.
now we
Now
have
you might be
here
asking, okay, are they
seen
really
that
valuable?
there is a
That's another
connection,
thing.
all right?
That's another thing, and that's a good
A
question if you're
logical
asking that.
connection,
It's
a
good that
conceptual
you are
connection
able to
between
analyze
an
this.
aim
I would like to ask you that not
aim
aim
of education
is
being
another
there,
topic to consider
and
as a big
now let me borrow
issue.
from the
All
word,
right.
or rather the
These
words
are
of
our
our
speakers.
speakers.
Our speakers,
We have
you might take a
here
look. He just
seen
recently
that
died
there is a
9 years
connection,
ago.
right?
It's 2020 right
A
now.
logical
So this is
connection,
the
a
philosopher of
conceptual
education.
connection between
Our
an aim
speakers.
of
Aim. This is
education
what
being
he
there,
says. And
and
as a
very
now let me
big
borrow
issue.
from the
All
word,
right.
or rather the words of our speakers. Our education relates to some sorts of processes in which a desirable or valuable state of mind develops. It would be much of a logical contradiction to say that the person had been educated and yet the change was in no way desirable, as it would be to say that he had been reformed and had made no change for the better. Education implies the intentional bringing about of a valuable state of mind. I know, all right. Our topic is aim, and it's very obvious that he's not talking about aim here. He's talking about the concept of education. But let me just, I mean, for me, there's not much of a like I think it's just two sides of the same coin. All right, concept of education and aim of education. But let's apply that idea to his idea to our topic, aim. Aim is an aim because there is value in it, and it is a logical contradiction. He's saying it. We cannot say that, yeah, I am being educated, that it is considered an aim of education, and yet it is not desirable, yet it is not valuable. It's like saying this is an aim of education, but this aim of education is not valuable. No, it is a logical contradiction. It's a conceptual impossibility. The mere fact that it is an aim, it's considered valuable. All right. Now let's look at this from the senior high school subject, contemporary Philippine arts from the regions. Maybe you are handling this one for senior high school. One of the competencies, one of the aims is that the student is able to classify various art forms found in the Philippines. Applying Peter's understanding, there is value. There is something desirable. There is something worthwhile in being able to classify various art forms found in the Philippines. Now, to give you like a fun example, have you thought of this one? I mean, think about this. Why is it that Filipinos, all right, why is it that we are studying the history of like, why is it that we're studying Asian history, and not the history of Naruto? Think about that, right? Why is it in basic education it is Asian history and not the history of Naruto? Well, because there is value, much value in Asian history than in the history of Naruto. That's it. The mere fact that it is there, it's considered valuable. Here's the thing. Let me add the word purport or claimed, or claimed to be. Any aim of education is purportedly considered valuable. It would not have been considered an aim if there were no perceived value in it. Now, it's very important that we understand purport, because yes, as I was saying, it's already an aim, and one of the conceptual baggages of aim is that it is valuable, but it doesn't necessarily follow that it is intrinsically valuable, that is genuinely valuable. So we have to distinguish these two things, and the distinction is very important. It's very important because this distinction is what is going to push us to continuously evaluate the content of the curriculum, to continuously evaluate the pedagogical approaches that we are using, because it just doesn't follow that just because it is there in the K-12 program that it is genuinely valuable. They are purportedly valuable. Hence, we must continuously evaluate them. So any aim of education is purportedly considered valuable. Now, let's look at this. We're where's aim, or rather, where are the aims in Philippine educational formal Philippine formal education? So they are actually in the curriculum and in our pedagogy. So curriculum, they are in the form, these aims are in the form of competencies, the objectives found in the curriculum guides across all the subjects provided, I mean, stipulated by the Department of Education. Obviously, the students are the recipients that at the end of this K to 12 program, that at the end of this year learning English 9, at the end of this year learning Science 3, the students should be able to learn these competencies. The students should be able to acquire these objectives, I mean, these competencies, learn them. And from the perspective of the teacher should be able to teach these competencies. So these are the aims. And from the perspective of the educational institutions, they should be hiring competent teachers who are able to impart, who are able to teach. Now, I'm using the word teach in a very general sense, who are able to teach this, who are able to ensure that the students acquire these competencies. So these are the aims. All right, it's the same thing. Okay, and all of these are coming from the DepEd. As you can see, this is a very patriarchal system. All right, from the top to the bottom. It's the same thing with textbooks. Textbooks ought to be written in compliance with the curriculum guides, because if a textbook were written not in compliance with it, it's going to be, let me use the word, anathematized. It will be stigmatized. It's not going to be endorsed by the DepEd. It's not going to be used by educational institutions. It's the same thing with our pedagogical approaches. We have been hearing a lot about constructivism, inquiry-based, reflective, collaborative, and integrative. These things are stipulated in RA 10533. Now, the reason why they are stipulated is that the assumption is that they are purportedly valuable. Now, I personally have concerns with constructivism, but I mean, we can have a discussion this next time, or probably through email or Facebook. So the point is this: everything that is in the curriculum, any aim, competency, objective, it's there because it's purportedly valuable. And any pedagogical approach that is there, stipulated, it's there because it's considered valuable, purportedly valuable. All right, so that's the point. Now, let's just review before we move on to another concern, another topic. So far, I demonstrated to you how we can approach the topic aims of education from the philosophical perspective. We do a second order inquiry. We don't just ask, we don't just look for substantive answers to the question, what are the aims of education? We first, if you're doing philosophy, we have to ask prior questions, answer prior questions, meta questions, like what is aim, what is education? Does it even make sense to ask the question? All right. And then we also have this idea now that aim is a foreseen end, borrowing John Dewey, and that it functions in this way. It directs our activity, and that there are four ways in how it functions, how it directs our activity, like the means, all right, hindrances, order of sequence, and economy, or making it economical, or something that it economizes with an aim. It economizes your activity. And then thirdly, we also saw that any aim of education is purportedly valuable. Again, the distinction is very important: purported, not yet genuinely, all right, purportedly valuable. And then lastly, we look at the aims in the forms of competencies in the curriculum guides. Now, you might be wondering, John, these are aims, all right? These competencies are grounded, they are particular, they're constrained in specific subjects. What about aims that are not grounded? What about aims that are not aims that are not constrained by subjects? Are are there aims such as those that are not specifically constrained by the English subject? not specifically constrained by the a science subject. Now, if you are asking this kind of question, we are now being led to another conception of aim, which is not specific. And this is what I call the fundamental aim, or the fundamental aims. And in our purposes, the fundamental aims of PH education, or FAPE. Are there FAPEs? Do we have fundamental aims of education? Now, I'm not going to tell you what I think is the fundamental aim of education. Let's just look, let's just determine if our educational system has. Oh, yes, our system has. Are you aware of them? I hope that you are. And if you're not, please, I implore you to listen to this one. Do we have fundamental aims of education? They are stipulated in Republic Act 10533, which is the Enhanced Basic Act of Basic Education Act of 2013. This is the legal basis of the K to 12 program. What are the FAPES of our system? In section 2, let me just read verbatim. In section 2, Declaration of Policy, it says, every graduate shall be an empowered individual who has learned. An empowered individual. In what way is he, she an empowered individual? Look at this. Who has learned first the foundations for learning throughout life. Second, the competence to engage in work and be productive. Third, the ability to coexist in fruitful harmony with local and global communities. Fourth, the capability to engage in autonomous, creative, and critical thinking. And then lastly, the capacity to transform others and oneself. These are the FAPES. Again, given that they are FAPES, aims, fundamentals, there is this assumption that they are purportedly valuable. Now, if you're going to ask, are they really valuable? Wow, that's a very interesting question, and it really needs to be answered. But let's just look at this. Now, you know what? I've been telling myself every time I look at this, you can write a thesis on just one of this. You can write a dissertation on one of this. I myself am writing a thesis on just one of this right now. So this is something that is so complex. There's so much to unpack from this. And that is the point of fundamental aims. That is the very nature of fundamental aims. There is so much to unpack. These are very complex ideas. So let's just focus. Okay, how is it? All right, how is it that a fundamental aim works? Okay, if suppose if X is a fundamental aim of education, then it should be present in the curriculum. It should be there. The curriculum, all right. Again, aim is something that directs the activity, right? To apply that to education, if X is our aim, our fundamental aim, then the curriculum must be written. The curriculum must be crafted in such a way that we are efficiently producing an individual who possesses X, whatever it is. So if Republic Act 10533 states that one of the FAPES is an autonomous thinker, then the curriculum must be written, crafted in such a way as to produce efficiently rather an autonomous, or rather, an autonomous thinker. That is how a fundamental aim works. It should be directing the curriculum, the content, and not only that, it should be directing our pedagogy, our pedagogical approaches, that the approaches that we imbibe, we do inside the classroom should be in such a way as to produce this empowered individual with these 5 characterizations, with these 5 properties. And it's the same thing with textbooks. Textbooks should be written in such a way as to produce this empowered individual. And it's the same thing with assessment. And that is how a fundamental aim of education works. Now let's focus on this one. Oh, very interesting. I hope that I'm whetting your appetite. Very interesting. One of the FAPEs of our educational system is this: every graduate shall be an empowered individual who has learned the capability to engage in critical thinking. Again, I said a while ago, I'm not yet giving you my position. All right, I'm not going to do that. What I think is the FAPE, or what I think should be the aims of our educational system. What we're trying to do right now is I'm showing you that we have these FAPEs, and we're looking particularly at one FAPE, which is critical thinking, that our system should be producing an empowered individual who is a critical thinker. And let's look at this. All right. Let us evaluate what does it. So if, no, not if, since critical thinking is a FAPE, therefore the curriculum, our teaching, our textbooks, our assessment, and the entirety of the educative domain, Philippine educative domain, should be contributing, should be producing this kind of individual. Now, here's the question. Are we producing critical thinkers, my fellow teachers? Are we producing critical thinkers? It's stated that our educational system is supposedly producing critical thinkers. Are we? Is the K to 12 program producing critical thinkers? Okay. Now I think there is a need for us to embark on an empirical study to be able to substantively answer that we are not producing or that we are producing. It requires an empirical study. But I think based on observation, which is somehow tenable, all right? Based on observation, I think we are not producing critical thinkers. We are not. I mean, we have a lot of, well, this is something that I borrowed from a mentor of mine from the philosophy of education department in the university that I'm in. He usually uses examples from politics. We have a lot of incompetent politicians. And the reason why we have incompetent politicians is that the voters who are, well, who came from this educational system are not so critical thinkers. So we can safely say that we are not producing critical thinkers. We can safely say that the K-12 program is not producing critical thinkers. Now, let me give you some answers, like some explanations. Okay, these are my explanations why the K-12 program fails to produce critical. Later on, we're gonna do a positive, like I'm going to suggest. So what are the reasons why we are not producing critical thinkers? First is this: there is no stipulation of critical thinking. Let me just use variables. CT is on a national level. In PH education, there is none. I've been hearing the phrase critical thinking from fellow educators. It's being uttered in the four walls of the classroom. It's being uttered by many, if not all, teachers. It's being uttered by many, if not all, educational administrators, principals, directors, deans, professors. Critical thinking, we are producing critical thinkers. But do they really understand what critical thinking means? And the thing is that one of the reasons why there is this so much like diversity in our understanding of critical thinking is that there is no, on a national level, a stipulation of it. Now you might be wondering, why is there a need to have like a national kind of stipulation of CT? Later on, okay, let me answer that later on. But there is no stipulation of it. I've been looking at policies, educational documents produced by the CHED and the Department of Ed so far. Now, I might be mistaken, okay? I might be mistaken. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I will be very much glad to learn from you. But so far, I haven't seen any stipulation of what critical thinking is. But if there is even a stipulation, it is vague, it is ambiguous, it's not coherent, it's not so coherent in such a way that it will have great implications toward policy making, toward decision making. So that's one of the reasons. Secondly, in-service teachers might not have a robust understanding of CT. Okay, as I said a while ago, it's being uttered in schools, it's being uttered in universities, in educational institutions, but they might not have a robust understanding of CT. Now, they might understand it, but it's not robust. We need a robust, a strong understanding of a clear, coherent, tenable conception of critical thinking. Because, I mean, if you're a teacher, let's say teacher one views CT as X, and then teacher two views CT as Y. Now, teacher one will implement activities that will facilitate, will cultivate CT in her students, and then teacher two will implement CT, which is viewed as Y in another setting. But it is very much possible that these views are contradictory. Now, I would have understood it if we have diverse conceptions of CT, yet they are complementary with one another. What I mean by complementary, they do not contradict one another. It's just fine. They're different, but they don't contradict. But the problem is that they are different, and not only that, they even contradict one another. They even contradict one another. Now, one teacher, okay, what's my justification for saying that? Now, during the 1980s and the 1990s and up until now, okay, there have been several conceptions, there have been several theories of critical thinking. We have the names of Robert Ennis, uh, Richard Paul, John McPeck, Harvey Siegel. These people, you know what? They have different conceptions of critical thinking. And if the teachers will be borrowing from their works, which is basically good, and apply this, then we will be having like contradictory applications within the educative domain. So the point is that in-service teachers might not have a robust understanding of CT. That's one possible explanation why we fail. We are failing to produce critical thinkers. Next, pre-service teachers are not really educated in the complexity of CT. Not. Okay, as a digression, let me just commend, all right, let me highly commend the College of Education of the University East. Now, I'm not commending the College of Education because I work there. No, I'm not doing that. I'm commending it because I have seen the program and I am impressed of the program, and the program is very robust. Why? Now, the College of Education of the University East is offering the subject called creative and critical thinking. Now, imagine that. That's all pre-service teachers, irrespective of their specializations, will have to study that critical thinking and creative thinking. Critical thinking for one semester. The philosophy will be studied, the anthropological side, the psychology of it, the methodologies, the strategies. That is what we are talking about. If it is to be a fundamental aim of education, pre-service teachers should be taught, should be educated in critical thinking. Now, so far as I know, there's another university, a university in Diliman that offers that. So far as I know, these are the two universities that offer critical thinking to students. Well, what about the other teacher education institutions? What about them? If this is an educational ideal, why aren't we educating pre-service teachers in critical thinking? It's such a complex thing. There's so much in it. Now, that is the side. Okay, these three, my idea is that it is not present. Now, yeah, city is present, yes, but let me point out to you three problems that eventually lead me to the conclusion that K-12 program fails to produce critical thinking. Okay, fourth is this. The existence of highly problematic definitions in published textbooks. All right. Look at this. Excuse me, let me just drink water for a while. One of the one one of the reasons why we are failing to produce critical thinkers is that even though CT is present, the definitions provided are highly problematic. This is a definition from a textbook for the subject, the professional education subject, the teaching profession. Now, the teaching profession, since it is a professional education subject, it is required to be taken up by all pre-service teachers. Now, this definition is from a textbook published by a very big publishing house. I'm not going to mention it, all right? And this textbook is written by a professor from a reputable university. I'm not going to mention the name. But since this is a textbook published by a big publishing house and written by a reputable a professor from a reputable university, the assumption, the repercussions are big. Many teacher education institutions, I am assuming, and I think I'm correct, are using this textbook. So the teacher, the pre-service teacher, will be looking at this definition and then will imbibe this kind of definition of critical thinking. Now, what is the problem with this definition? This is highly problematic. It says critical thinking is a cognitive ability and capacity to think critically in solving problems, making decisions, and in processing ideas. This is simple. If you're aware of informal logic, this is circular. It's like asking, what is psychological thinking? It is the capacity to think psychologically. What is anthropological thinking? It's the capacity to think anthropologically. Circular, begging the question, petitio principii. It doesn't really make sense. Now, when we define, obviously we define because we want to unpack, we want to make sure that the reader understands, but the reader does not understand because this is circular. And this is in a textbook published by a big publishing house and written by a professor from a reputable university. And imagine that the repercussion is this: being read, being studied, being swallowed, hopefully not, but swallowed by many pre-service teachers. And this is why we are failing to produce critical thinkers, because we have these problematic definitions in textbooks. This is just one example. I can show you some others. Now, fifthly, all right, only selected students study CT. All right, yeah, critical thinking is there, but only students from the Hume's strand are studying critical thinking. Now, I'm referring, okay, in senior high school, there obviously there is ABM, STEM, general academic, the other tracks and strands. And one of these is Hume's. Okay, now Hume students are required to take up the subject called trends, networks, and critical thinking in the 21st century. Now, if CT is a fundamental aim of, if it is a FAPE, and it is a FAPE, then why is it that only Hume students are learning? Why is it not being taught to all students, senior high school students, whether they're from STEM, gas, sports, arts and design, ABM? Why only Hume's? It's only being offered to selected students. And lastly, yes, we have this subject, but you know what? I challenge you. After this one, you go to DepEd, look at the curriculum guide of the subject trends, networks, and critical thinking. Unless they updated it, but the one that I have, it has no mention, nothing at all of critical thinking. Well, it did mention strategic thinking, intuitive thinking, but nothing at all about critical thinking. Well, critical thinking, it's there in the very subject description. but it's not even present in the curriculum guide. What is the repercussion here? Okay, the repercussion here is this. Publishing houses obviously will have to produce textbooks in compliance to the curriculum guides. And since these publishing houses have not seen any like any item about critical thinking, they will not include critical thinking in their published books. And I can assure you, I have seen most of the textbooks in this subject. They have no explanation. They have no discussion whatsoever of critical thinking. I mean, imagine that. It's there. It's there in the subject description, but it's not being taught. Now, there are exemptions, of course. There are exemptions. There are some textbooks on this subject that do include critical thinking, and I highly commend the authors. But most, it's not there. Why? Because it's not in the curriculum guide. So these are the 6 reasons why I think we are failing to produce critical thinkers, and there could be more. Now, to look at it from the positive, from to look at to suggest, all right, suggest. How do we now reinforce CT as a FAPE? Obviously, there must be a stipulation on a national level of what CT is. Now, you might be asking, can we even do that? Oh, actually, we have been doing that. If you look at the curriculum of Edukasyon sa Pagpapakatao, the DepEd has specifically pointed out like a framework, all right, a framework for and even named names, named practitioners, theories to follow. So if we are able to do that for Edukasyon sa Pagpapakatao, and probably in other subjects, we can do the same thing for critical thinking. We can stipulate on a national level a conception of CT that is robust and tenable. Second, obviously, in-service teachers should have a robust understanding of CT. Now, they're already in the service, they're already grounded. How do we do it? During insets, during in-service trainings. Teachers are, in-service trainings on how to do, on critical thinking. If this is a fundamental aim of education, then at the very least, in-service teachers should have a robust understanding of CT. Now, I've been seeing a lot of topics of insets, and most of them are about classroom management, techniques. They are all important, but we are missing something else. Because the point is, if this is a FAPE, then in-service teachers should have a robust understanding of it. Next, pre-service teachers should be educated in the complexity of CT. How? By placing it as a subject. There must be a subject. Or if we cannot include a subject, it must be injected explicitly in one of the subjects. Now, I am very much aware of all the subjects, the professional education subjects, and I am not so sure how we can inject critical thinking in any of those subjects. But pre-service teachers should be educated in the complexity of CT. Next, textbooks for pre-service teacher education must be thoroughly evaluated to avoid the dissemination of untenable and incoherent definitions. Anyway, okay, I think that's very clear. And that all students should study CT as a subject, or subjects must explicitly touch upon CT. It means that a science teacher, an in-service science teacher, assuming that she already has a robust understanding of CT, she will have to put it there explicitly in her lessons. That's the way how we develop dispositions. Critical thinking is a disposition. That is a way how we develop dispositions. It must be there must be continuity, and it must be explicit. It must really be there. And then lastly, CT must be explicitly present in the CGs of all subjects, and textbooks that are to be written and published must discuss CT. All right. What are, John? Okay, yeah, you gave us like an evaluation of the existing FAPE, the existing FAPE, which is, and one of which is CT. So what is your proposal? Okay, we have to look at the essentials. These are the essentials that all CT must have, like an all CT subjects or discussion or to be a part of the curriculum, it must be present. First is that we must have a clear, coherent, tenable definition of city. As I said a while ago, there is a diversity and these innumerable conceptions are even contradictory. But we must have a clear, coherent, tenable definition. And next, there must be a robust justification for its being a FAPE. Suppose that my proposal has been implemented, that it's being explicitly taught by all teachers in whatever subjects, like let's suppose a MAPE teacher. So, and then the MAPE teacher prepares a lesson uh, with a framework for critical thinking on certain topics in music. So the student would go to the grade 7 student would go to the teacher, teacher, why are we learning critical thinking? Now, for the teacher to be able to convince a student, the teacher should be convinced himself of the justification why we are producing critical thinkers. In other words, there must be an explicit, concrete justification, robust, all right? Because you can provide reasons, but those reasons might not be robust. We are looking for robust, strong reasons, strong justifications why city is a FAPE. And you know what? These questions, these essentials, are to be answered by philosophy. We can borrow a lot from philosophy to be able to have a clear, coherent, tenable definition and a robust justification. That's philosophy basically. Philosophy deals with, the point of philosophizing is to have clear and coherent definition. Remember, philosophical definition via conceptual analysis. And not only that, philosophy is very rational. It looks for it really looks for justification. Nothing is sacred in philosophy. Nothing is sacrosanct in philosophy. Everything is being critically evaluated. Now, here's my question. Is philosophy of education in the curriculum of pre-service teachers? It's not there. The nearest that we have, so it means that pre-service teachers are not really, okay, if you're convinced that CT is a FAPE, all right, if you're convinced, then teachers must be educated in CT. Now, the best way to educate teachers in CT is through philosophy, because it is where we get strong definitions. It's where we get a robust justifications. Where is philosophy of education or philosophy of critical thinking in the curriculum for pre-service teachers? It's not there. The nearest that we have for teachers, pre-service teachers, learning about philosophy in the curriculum is the subject called the teaching profession. Now, if you are interested, a work of mine was published some time ago, published in the University of the East Research Journal, Research Bulletin Journal. It's the official journal of the University of the East. I did there a critic, an evaluation of the approach being done in the subject, the teaching profession. So if you're a pre-service teacher and you're pursuing this subject, and if you're about to pursue this, I highly suggest that you read that one. So the library has it. I think the library has it. So my contention there is that the approach, this is the subject that this is probably the only subject that really deals with philosophy, because it is where the isms are studied. Constructive, like realism, essentialism, perennialism. But the approach is highly unphilosophical, highly problematic, and that is my thesis in that research that I did. So if you're interested, yeah, you read that. Anyway, let's continue. So for the essentials of CT, so we not only need a tenable definition, we not only need a robust justification, we also need methodologies, strategies, techniques, cultivating CT in students. And this is where the subject called critical thinking and creative thinking comes in, which the University of the East College of Education offers and another university in Diliman offers, and really highly commendable. And then obviously, one of the essentials as well is we should be able to relate CT to other forms of thinking. I mean, how is it connected to creative thinking? That's a very good question. How is it connected to the HOTS, the higher thinking skills, or is there really such a connection at all, right? And many, and these two will be something that we can get from the other foundational fields of education, or rather in education. And then there are other essentials. But I think these are the four essentials for CT as a FAPE for pre-service and in-service teachers. All right, clear, coherent. So I underline this. So I'm almost done. Here's my proposal for critical thinking. We just said a while ago that philosophy deals with, I mean, the aim of philosophy is to have, I mean, the conclusion of philosophizing is to have clear, concrete, tenable, coherent definitions. Now, my proposal for CT is to look at it from the vantage point of philosophy. I'm not saying that it only must be looked at from the vantage point of philosophy. No, I'm not saying that. It should also be looked at from the vantage point of psychology or from the other foundational subjects in education. But initially, primarily from the vantage point of philosophy. And my special interest, particularly in epistemology. Hear me out first. Hear me out. Now, epistemology is one of the major branches of philosophy. It is the branch of philosophy that deals with knowledge. It asks the question, what is knowledge? It asks questions, what is truth? What is justification? How do we determine whether our beliefs are rational or irrational or irrational? So this is epistemology. And there are others, like there are other branches: metaphysics, ethics, logic, aesthetics, and I even mentioned a while ago, axiology. Okay, we look at critical thinking from the vantage point of epistemology. Why? Consider this, my fellow teachers and my my fellow teachers. Critical thinking is primarily concerned with rationality and reason. Are you willing? Okay, can we say that you are a critical thinker, but the beliefs that you hold onto are irrational? Can we say that? It's a logical contradiction. Can we say that you are a critical thinker, yet you don't hold on to good reasons for the actions that you're about to do or for the actions that you are doing? Obviously not. You cannot be a critical thinker if you are not engaged fundamentally, if you are not disposed to the very search for rationality and reason. There is this conceptual bind, there is this logical bind between critical thinking and rationality and reason. We cannot separate critical thinking from rationality and reason. They always go together. Now, rationality and reason are epistemological concepts. They are being studied in epistemology. One of the major questions in epistemology is, what are the conditions for saying that a belief or an action or a person or a system is rational? Reason are epistemological concepts. Therefore, if you are convinced that critical thinking is primarily concerned with rationality and rationality and reason are epistemological concepts, and I'm suggesting that philosophy is primarily and initially be the framework for any critical thinking conception, then critical thinking, my suggestion is to be construed as applied epistemology. Now there is so much to unearth here, and that's why I'm very excited to see the syllabus of the subject creative and critical thinking in the College of Education. I might request Dr. Kalaweng to give me a copy of the syllabus. I'm very excited. All right, I'm very I'm very proud of what UE College of Education did here. Okay, so again, if city is a FAPE, all right, it must be present in the curriculum. It must be present in our pedagogical approaches. It must be present in teaching, in textbooks. It must be present in assessment, because that's how we can produce an empowered individual who is a critical thinker. Because if it's not even present in the CG, then how are we able to direct our activities? Remember, aim is that which directs your activity. How will we be able to direct our educational activities such that we are producing critical thinkers? We cannot. It's impossible. So critical thinking as a fundamental aim of education. Again, I haven't given you my position here. What we just did is we determined whether critical thinking fundamental educational aim in the Philippines. Yes, it is. I showed you the legal document. It is found on RA 10533. All right. Now, lastly, we just talked about critical thinking here, by the way. So there are other things: autonomous thinking, creative thinking, capacity to transform others and oneself. Please look at this one. There's another thing: the capability to engage. Number 4, the capability to engage in autonomous, creative, and critical thinking. I seem to think that the word autonomous here is superfluous. It is redundant, because a critical thinking is an autonomous. Sorry, a critical thinker is an autonomous thinker already. So if it is already subsumed under critical thinking, why even put it there? So my suggestion is just to change it, like the capability to engage in creative and critical thinking. Now, creative and critical thinking, yes, they're different. They're different, but there are similarities. All right, so that is how we view fundamental, the fundamental aim of Philippine education, FAPE, present in the curriculum, in teaching, in textbooks, and in assessment. So these are the things that we did, and I showed to you that critical thinking is basically a FAPE, a fundamental aim of Philippine education, and I provided you with explanations why we are failing to produce critical thinkers. And then lastly, I really hope that I'm able to convince you of the merits of philosophizing about education. Maybe you are the person who thinks that philosophy is too theoretical. It's not practical. It's not grounded. We need concrete solutions to problems. Yes, but remember, I am one with you. I am one with you. I started with I also have the desire to my modest, okay, modest, not my modest desire to contribute some to the betterment of our educational system. And I was able to land on philosophy of education. So I hope that I was able to convince you of the merits of philosophizing about education. So with this, thank you very much. If you have questions, you could kindly email me. You could add me up in Facebook. I'm willing to discuss more. Thank you very much, everybody.
Ayan. Thank you po, Sir John Israel Conana, for the wonderful talk for today. Ayan. Baka naman po may ibang katanungan pa ang ating mga participants na nanonood po dito sa ating Zoom at sa mga nanonood din po sa ating FB live streaming and also in YouTube streaming. Baka po may mga katanungan, send your question now.
Thank you po once again, Sir Conan, for the wonderful talk. People in the SE live streamings are thanking you for the very informative talk po. Congratulations po.
So if there are questions, yes, let's discuss constructively. I'm very much willing to learn from you. So just take them, please.
So partner, as of now, may tanong ba tayo sa ating FB Live?
As of now, partner, wala pa po, pero they're still congratulating Sir Kunanan for that wonderful talk.
Yes, same din dito sa ating Zoom group chat.
Actually, there is one from the group chat partner.
Yes.
It's from Miss Ursula Pasqua. Sir, you think Sir Filipino lacks critical thinking? That's why our social media are so toxic. Is it about time to include subjects about it and start as early as preschool?
Am I back? Oh, I'm sorry, I was not able to hear that question. My connection was unstable a while ago. Could you kindly repeat that, please?
Yes, sir. Wait. It's from Miss Ursula Pascapa. The question
Mhm.
is, sir, do you think Filipino lacks critical thinking? That is why our social media are so toxic. Is it about time to include subjects about it and start as early as preschool?
Is it about time to add subjects such as, I'm sorry, such as,
Is it early? It is about ano pa? Is it about time to include subjects about um critical thinking po, as early
uh,
as preschool?
oh, okay, well, a very interesting question. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Um, okay, I understand that re- revising the curriculum, the K to 12 curriculum takes time. It takes time. I mean, let's be. It's obviously okay. But what if, okay? What if our teachers, the teachers themselves, all right? If we cannot put critical thinking in the curriculum in the near future or even in the remote future, then we should invest in our teachers. And that's what I was trying to say a while ago. One of the things is that it should be taught to teachers, pre-service teachers, in-service teachers. Because if the teachers themselves have robust understanding of what critical thinking is, and if it is clear to them that it is a FAPE, a fundamental aim of our educational system, then they will be guided in their lessons. I'm not an expert in science. I'm not an expert in math. I'm not an expert in the other subjects. But these teachers are experts. Now think of it. But if they possess robust understanding of it, in their own ways, they can craft lessons that include explicitly critical thinking, and yet it's about math, and yet it's about science, yet it's about edukasyon sa pagpapakatao, yet it's about history. So again, we should first, it's my suggestion, invest this to the teachers themselves, because the teachers are the ones who are teaching students, and eventually it will follow. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you po, sir. Yan. As of now, Dana, there is no question, partner.
Yes, but there is still no um question from the Facebook Live framing up.
Okay, I saw the question of Professor College Secretary Diaz. Let me just read that. What do you think is the fundamental flaw or hindrance towards critical thinking among students, teachers? Mm, okay, well, thank you, ma'am, for this question. Okay, to reiterate what I just mentioned, a while ago I mentioned the uh, explanations why we are failing. All right, I think one of the fundamental, just to reiterate, one of the fundamental flaws is that we don't have a robust understanding of critical thinking. I mean, honestly, right now, if I ask you what is critical thinking, will you be able to give me a definition? You will be you might tell me it is analytical thinking. It is like all these other slogans, all these other cliches. But do I mean, are they helping us? Do they help us in our crafting of our lessons? Do they help us? Apparently, no, because and that only shows that we do not really have a robust understanding of critical thinking. Because again, if we don't have a robust understanding of critical thinking, we won't be able to apply it in our daily lessons. We won't be able to apply it in our pedagogical approaches. And that is the point of having a robust understanding. Remember a while ago, robust understanding is imperative because I mean, it has repercussions, it has implications in policy making, in educational practices, in decision making, in whatever things that we do. So the very first thing, the flaw is we don't have a robust understanding of it. And why don't we have a robust understanding of it? I mentioned six reasons a while ago. Thank you, Professor Diaz.
Yan. Thank you po, sir. And then, Dana, wala na ba tayong question for today?
Actually,
I
there's
Meron.
more.
Yes, from Laska Glenn, suggest a practice on how to integrate critical thinking in class activities and what is the best assessment tool to use.
okay, thank you very much. I think this is yes, Sir Glenn Laksa. Thank you very much for the question. Let me just repeat it for the sake of the listeners. The question is, how do we integrate critical thinking in our class activities? What is the best assessment tool to use? All right, let me answer fundamentally here. Let's suppose that Sir Glenn is a math teacher. Now, if I give out, okay, if I give out a specific educational activity, if I suggest rather, I mean, who am I to give? All right, who am I to give a specific class activity? I'm not an expert in math. Now, the teacher who is an expert in math should be the one to concoct, should be the one to think of activities, best activities specifically for math. If you're a science teacher, then you think of activities specifically for science that incorporate and that would aim to cultivate critical thinking in students. So again, let me go back to the point. Teachers should have robust understanding because they themselves would eventually know how to incorporate this into their own lessons. The problem is we have been asking, we need concrete solutions, we need concrete methodologies, we need concrete strategies, we need concrete techniques. Yes, it's understandable. But let's focus first on understanding what critical thinking is. And I assure you that once you have understood what it is, you yourself will be able, it will be like a floodgate opening. You will be able to come up with a lot of activities specifically for your subject, specifically for your field. So the question being asked of me to provide a specific educational activity, that's something I will have to beg off. Please think about it. You think about it. But before that, we have to have a robust understanding of critical thinking. And we do that by studying philosophy.
Ayan, sir. For the last response from Teacher Grace Diaz, we have a lot of participants here from all over and from varying ages. What do you advise for all of us listening now to you how we can survive these tenuous times, pandemic fears, uncertainties, stress, and anxiety through critical and creative thinking?
Okay. Well, Ma'am Diaz, this is a very difficult question to ask. I mean to answer. Sorry. Okay. But I remember, I remember Clive Staples Lewis, C.S. Lewis. He mentions in one of his talks. Uh, okay, because this guy, I think a lot of us know, right? A lot of us know C.S. Lewis. He's the author of the Chronicles of Narnia, and I can say that he's a great thinker. All right, and he wrote some articles and he did some speeches regarding education. So if you're interested, you read The Abolition of Man, and he lived during the war. Now, there was a question to him. A question was given to him like education amidst the war. So if we put ourselves in the same situation, it's like asking, how do we continue with education, with the ideals of education, with all these things about education amidst the pandemic? And here's what he said: we just continue. We just continue. And why do we have to continue? Because we believe, all right? We believe that the very activity of education is very important, whether there is war, whether there is hunger, whether there is a pandemic. It will be important in any situation. It will be important in any kind of circumstance, in any kind of surrounding. And I think that's the most consoling, if ever it is consoling, the most consoling thing that I can possibly say. You continue, teachers, please continue with your learning, with the preparation of lessons. If you're a student, continue with your learning, with trying to understand what is being taught of you. Why? Because education, no matter what the circumstance is very important. It is very important because it has something to do with making us human. So that is my answer.
Yes, thank you po, Sir Kananan. If ever there are more questions po, you could connect to Sir through his Gmail, and also you can add him on Facebook po. Thank you po.
Yan. Thank you po. And now, pupunta na tayo sa ating POTD or Pulot of the Day. Baka po kung may natutunan po tayo for this episode, kindly chat on our Zoom group chat or kindly comment on our Facebook live streaming and YouTube live streaming para po sabihin namin yung inyong pulot of the day. Di ba, partner?
Yes, that is so true, partner. Once again, people from the FB live streaming is congratulating Sir Kananan for his very informative talk.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Yes.
much, everyone. Thank you very
Special.
much.
Yes,
Uh,
sir. Go,
yes,
partner.
and there is this one from Sir Ryan Cruz po. Critical thinking in the classroom is to answer the higher order thinking skill question po. It's just one of his thoughts po shared during the talk.
Yun, thank you. Totoo. Nakakamiss din talaga yan, partner, yung mga critical and creative thinking.
Yes.
Yes. Mapagdadaanan mo ba yan o mapagdadaanan mo pa rin yan? Makikilala mo na yung mga logical, yung mga informal fallacies, yung mga ad comentum, ad hominem, yung mga ganon, partner. Soon.
Doing, oh my gosh, I can't
Yes.
wait.
Yes. It is,
Um, by the way, excuse me, is it fine that we do uh, a
Yes,
picture?
yes, sir.
Okay, like some sort of a class picture.
Yes.
I
And
just want to see the tiles of pictures of the listeners. Thank you very much. Yeah, I will just print screen it.
yes po. And Dana, since parang wala nang POTD for today, let's
Yes,
give our certificate of recognition for Mr. John Israel Cunanan.
yes po. And to give the
Thank you.
certificate of recognition, University of the East College of Education, in collaboration with the College of Education Student Council, academic year 2020 to 2021, certificate of recognition is hereby given to Mr. John Israel Yukonanan for having generously shared his time and expertise as resource speaker during the Educ Talk webinar on the topic how to, when to, and why think about aims of education, given this day, July 30, 2020, signed by the College of Education Student Council Advisor Josefina Q. and the officer in charge of the College of Education, Dr. Eva Aurora D. Kaluwing. Thank you po and congratulations po.
And thank you po and congratulations, sir. And before we go to another program or yung about sa certificate of participation, ihahabol ko lang, may nag-share din ng kanilang pulot of the day sa ating group chat, which is si Ma'am Ana Pajardo, encouraging the educators to help develop critical thinking by incorporating different subject to the learners. Applause for all of you. Thank you, Sir Kunanan. And last is kay Ursula Andrea Pasqua, Ma'am Ursula. Critical thinking cannot be taught to students if teacher lack that skill. Yan. Thank you po sa inyo.
Yes, po. And from Ma'am Edeline Joy Ostaco po, be a critical thinker, not just a thinker to contribute meaningfully for achieving the aims of education. We should help one another for the sake of our educational system. Hashtag POTD. Thank you po.
Po. And now for the certificate of participation. Your certificate of participation for today's episode or episode 8 will be given a week after this webinar. And bago po yan, pwede sasagutan po muna natin ang ating evaluation form for today's episode or for episode 8. And the link of the evaluation form will be presented on your screen and i-chat din po yan ng aming mga co-officer sa Student Council. Ayan na po, chinat na po ng aking partner na si Dana Faye Pelicio.
And uh, may we request for all the participants and also our guest speaker po to can we have a picture po? If you turn on your camera po, it means that you are permitting us to have a picture po. Thank you.
Thank you very
Medyo,
much, everyone. Thank you
yeah.
very much,
Thank you,
College of Education.
sir.
Dr. Kalaweng, thank you very much. Professor Diaz, thank you very much. And the Student Council, thank you very much.
Yan. Go Bats. You are the official photographer in Zoom.
Wala akong picture.
Okay, have a great day to everyone. Thank you.
Yan po. Go Bats. Sino si Bats?
Okay po, let's start with the picture po. Count po. 1, 2, 3 po. Isa pa po. 1, 2, 3. Okay po. Thank you po.
Thank you.
Thank you po sa lahat po na tumutok for today's
Thank you
episode.
po.
Thank you, partner.
Thank you, John.
Sir
Thank you so
John.
much.
Thank you din.
Thank you very much too, Dr. Kalaweng.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sir John.
Thank you.